Okay, welcome to podcast number 1 on attachment and learning theory. Attachment is basically the emotional and reciprocal bond between an infant and their caregiver. It's called reciprocal because it's reciprocated. Both individuals are attached to each other. There are 4 main characteristics of an attachment bond as identified by Maccabee 1980, although you don't actually need to know about Maccabee. The first is seeking proximity, especially in times of stress. Basically trying to be together a lot of the time. The second is separation anxiety, or showing distress when apart. The third is pleasure when reunited. And the fourth is general orientation of behavior towards the caregiver. There are loads of different explanations of how and why we form attachments, one of which is called learning theory. Learning theory is basically a view put forward mostly by behaviorists on how infants form attachments, and it's based on the concepts of classical and operant conditioning. Classical conditioning basically means learning by association. Food is an unconditioned stimulus that makes the infant feel pleasure, which is an unconditioned response. The caregiver is always there at the time of feeding and is a neutral stimulus. Over time, the infant begins to react with the same feeling of pleasure when their caregiver is present, even if they're not being fed. Basically, the caregiver has become a conditioned stimulus. They are now associated with pleasure, the conditioned response. Operant conditioning is learning by reinforcement. Positive reinforcement encourages behavior, and negative reinforcement discourages it. When hungry, an infant is really uncomfortable and cries. When the caregiver gives them food, they're comfortable again and they're happy. This is rewarding to the infant, who then tries to be with the caregiver as much as possible because they're a source of reward, which is positive reinforcement. There's been a lot of research done on learning theory. For example, Harlow and Harlow in 1962. In the study, infant monkeys were given 2 replacement mothers, a wire mother who gave them milk, and a soft towel-covered mother who gave them no milk. According to learning theory, the monkeys should have formed an attachment with the wire mother because she gave them food. But the monkeys actually showed a preference for contact comfort from the towel mother. They even used her as a secure base to explore from, which is a typical attachment behavior. However, contact comfort from the towel mother wasn't enough for the monkeys to develop psychologically, and it caused them problems in later life. For example, they were bad at parenting, and they didn't want to play or groom other monkeys. Therefore, there are ethical issues with this study. Harlow and Harlow generally undermines learning theory, but we should be cautious about generalizing a study done on monkeys to human behavior. Schaffer and Emerson, 1964, also undermines learning theory. The longitudinal study looked at attachment behaviors in 60 infants and found that they were more likely to attach to people who responded to their signals accurately, not necessarily whoever fed them. Schaffer and Emerson called this sensitive responsiveness. However, a lot of the study relied on mothers of the infants keeping records of their kids' behavior, so it could have been open to bias and inaccuracy, for example, social desirability bias. It's still more ecologically valid than other studies of attachment, though, because a lot of them are done in laboratories, such as Ainsworth and Bell Strange Situation. Besides these 2 pieces of research, learning theory is also criticized for being too reductionist. It tries to reduce complex human behaviors to very simplistic ideas like conditioning. A lot of psychologists agree that it is too simplified. And that is attachment and learning theory in a nutshell.